How you doing? I'm Sean McVeigh with Sean's Outdoor Adventures, and I want to welcome you to this compound bow review. And in this one, I'm going to be going over some of the Hoyt compound bows at Miller's Gun Shop. So a very special thanks to the people at Miller's for putting all the work in to help me get the bows ready to shoot in this video. And some of the things I did this year to try to help give us accurate data and standardize everything is I'm bringing my own chronograph to each location. So it's the same machine taking the readings at every location, and hopefully that will avoid some variance that you could get from one machine to the next. I also got a decibel meter so that we could put a number on how loud the bow is. So it's one thing to shoot a bow and say, oh, it's a quiet bow or it's a loud bow. But it's another thing to put a number on it so you can kind of see, okay, this is the number that was generated when this bow was shot, and this is the number that was generated when this bow was shot. So then you can compare each bow to each other, including one line to the next. Another thing I did is I measured exactly 3 feet 6 inches from the front leg of the tripod that I had my chronograph and decibel meter set up on at every location. So I shot each bow at the same exact distance from the instruments, again, to try to get everything as standardized as possible. Now I also purchased a vibration meter, which I hooked up with my phone to try to put a number to how much vibration each bow generates. However, it proved to be inadequate as far as giving reliable readings. And so going into next year, I'll have to, save up and get something better. And maybe if you like the bow review series, maybe you would consider donating $1 toward that cause, because vibration meters can be hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, depending on which one you get. And I'd also like to get a portable draw board with the scale on it, because in this shop and one of the other ones I went to, there really wasn't a conducive situation where I could use my scale to check the draw weight, and also there wasn't a good way for me to check and verify the draw length, which is something I'd really like to do in the future. So those are a couple $100. So again, if you like the whole series, consider just $1. If everybody chipped in $1, I'd be able to get these instruments to give more data in the future. But let's go ahead and get started here going over the Hoyt compound bow line. And again, I'm doing this at Miller's Gun Shop. Thanks again to the people at Miller's. Another thing that I'm doing is I'm physically measuring the axle to axle length. So this is 30 3/8. And also the brace height. This is 7 on the money. I'm also weighing the bows with a scale. 4.55. This one that I'm holding is the Pro Defiant. So I'm going to be doing the 30-inch axle to axle Pro Defiant, the 34, the Turbo, and the Carbon. And then I'm also going to do a couple of their popular entry-level bows. So this one here is the PowerMax, and then on the end over here I have the Ignite. I'm going to be shooting them through the chronograph at 5 grains per pound, so a 350 grain arrow, 70 pound draw weight, 30-inch draw length is what I'm going to shoot them all at. I didn't have record going, but I just did the vibration test for the 350 grain arrow. It was 4.4. That's 3.9. Okay. This is the Pro Defiant 30-inch axle to axle. Back wall. So the back wall is somewhat solid. And it's with those cable stops, it's not rock solid, and it's about a 6 or 7 out of 10 as far as coming off the back wall. Definitely feels better. 328. Duplicate 328. Duplicate 550 grain. 267. $267. So here we go with 34. I'm going to give it about 5 or 6 out of 10 for how easy it comes off the back wall. And it's a little bit, it's not a real solid back wall. 310. There you go. Thank you. And now I'm going to go to the 550 grain arrow. .253 and 69.3. Two. Okay, so here we go with the Turbo 5 grain per pound arrow. Back wall is a little better on this one, but you can see it comes off very easily. I give it a 4 or 5 out of 10. Definitely a much more radical curve on the, at the end of the draw cycle. It gets really heavy right there. 336, 79.2. 337, 79.1. 336. I will say I notice with the Turbo, it's a little more vibration and jump in your hand when it goes off compared to the non-Turbo of the Pro Defiant. .277. 277. 276. So this is the Pro Defiant Carbon with the vibration meter attached. 5 grain per pound arrow. .9. 9.1. Okay, we just got the draw length fixed on this one. When the timing is in, I think one or two of the other ones, the draw stop time was a little bad. When it's in, it's pretty good. I mean, it's pretty solid. Comes off the wall. I give it about a 5 or 6, 6 out of 10 when it's in time. I think, like I said, I think those other bows were a little bit out of time. So yeah, I'll go 5 or 6 out of 10 on, well, back wall's, pretty good when they're in time. But coming off is about 5, 6, somewhere in there. And I'm a little out of breath because I've just been running up and down the steps to get the draw length changed. Alright, so now the 550 grain arrow. $266 and 74. $266. So this is the ignite. First I'll do the 5 grain per pound arrow. Back wall is, well, the timing's a hair out on this one. It's not too bad. Comes off fairly easy. I'll give it a 5 out of 10 for staying on the back wall. And a not super solid back wall, but an okay back wall. 272. $272 and 76.4. Okay, now I'm going to use the 550 grain arrow. $222. $220. $222. 70.6. It's the PowerMax. Starting off with the 5 grain per pound arrow. Definitely a much more aggressive draw cycle with the PowerMax than with the Ignite. And they both come off the back wall. I'll give them a 5 out of 10 rating. It comes off pretty easily. 325. So you can see definitely a lot more speed with the PowerMax. But you also feel it in the draw cycle. $325, 76.5. Now I'm going to do the 550 grain arrow. $264, 70.1. So that's the Hoyt lineup that I'll be shooting here today. I would say if I had to pick one, I kind of like the carbon. It just had a good feel to it. If you're someone who shoots back tension and you like a bow that comes off the back wall a little bit easier than the Hoyt lineup, it might be something for you. My personal preference is I like a bow that really stays on the back wall. And coming up next, I'm going to be shooting Bowtech. And I know I pulled one back earlier this year, and I actually had to feel like I had to push it forward to let it down, and I kind of like doing that because when I'm at full draw, I like to relax my muscles. And you know, when you have a bow that stays on the back wall by itself for the most part, you don't have to worry about your hand coming forward. But the Hoyt lineup, you're going to come forward a little bit if you're, you know, if you're not too careful. And but that is actually something that some back tension shooters prefer. So I just point that out. You have to determine what your personal preference is, and don't base your personal preference off of just what I like, but you know, figure out what, you know, what works best for you. So I do like the carbon. I also want to pick up the PowerMax. If you're looking for more of a price point bow, which is what this would be considered, you got the whole package, quiver, sight, and rest out the door. This is a decently priced bow, you know, mid 600s, close to 700, with everything, stabilizer included. And it did hold its own, you know, with speed compared to some of the, you know, flagship bows. The draw cycle did feel a little bit more difficult to draw through at 70 pounds compared to some of the others, because you can tell the cam is different. You know, if you look at the cam on both of these bows, so you can feel a little difference there as far as aggressiveness of the draw cycle. But if you're looking for a price point bow that's going to hold up to the speeds, close to the speeds of your flagship bows, it's not a bad option. All right, before I close this video, I want to go through all the data that I captured here for you. Well, some of the main things. We're mainly looking at speed. What were the speeds I was getting? What are the speeds that they offer or say that the bows get? What was the noise of the bow when it went off? So I took my data and I put it on another sheet here that has my information, what I got, what their specs are, and you know, over here is more of the information that I got. So let's go over each bow. First, I'm going to talk about the Pro Defiant 30, which is the 30-inch axle to axle. I shot all of these bows at a 30-inch draw and 70 pounds. So the speed that I was getting for the Pro Defiant 30 was 328 feet per second, and their rating is 331, so that's pretty close. Over here for noise, it was 76.9 decibels with that 5 grain per pound arrow. Now, when we talk about the draw stops, you know, my ratings that I have for the draw stops, there's the back wall rating, like how solid is the back wall, and then how easy is it come down, does it come down off of the back wall. So for the Pro Defiant 30, with the cable stops, not limb stops, but cable stops, it was 6 out of 10, and the letdown, how easy it came off, was 7 out of 10. For the Pro Defiant 34, had 311 feet per second was the speeds, and their rating was 325. You know, for the decibel reading, it was 75. For my back wall, how solid the back wall was 6 out of 10, and how easy it came off the back wall was a 5 out of 10. Pro Defiant Turbo was 336 feet per second, and their rating was 350. And the decibel, the noise was 79.2. Back wall rating, how solid it was with the cable stops was 6 out of 10. And how easy it came off was 6 out of 10. The Carbon Defiant was 325 feet per second, and their rating is 331. The noise, the decibel reading was 76.9. Again, 6 out of 10 and 6 out of 10. PowerMax, so that's more of your, you're a little bit more of a price point bow there. It was 325 feet per second. However, I will say that the feel of that draw cycle felt a little more intense than some of the flagship bows, and I mentioned that before, but I just want to reiterate that they're still getting the speed, but it is a little bit more aggressive, as far as how it feels when you're drawing. At least to me it did. And I didn't have anything to verify the poundage on any of these bows, but I had asked for them to be set up at 70 pounds, so I'm assuming that's where they were. So 325, and their Hoyt's rating is 328, so it was pretty close. 74.7 was the noise. 6 out of 10 for how solid the back wall was, and a 5 out of 10 for how easy it came off. And for the PowerMax and the Ignite, I'm pretty sure they do not have the limb stop option, whereas the Defiant line does have the option of putting a limb stop on there. And then the Ignite was 272 feet per second compared to their 300 feet per second. And 76.5 for the decibel reading, 6 out of 10 for how solid the back wall was, and a 5 out of 10 for how easy it came off the back wall. Now, I try to be very fair and unbiased with all of my reviews, but I also don't like to talk negatively about any particular brand. So I just try to give you data so that you can make your own choice as far as what you like and what you're interested in. And I will say this, the draw stop wall ratings that I gave, as well as how easy it came off, they could vary a little bit depending on how you set up a Hoyt. all the bows I shot were utilizing the cable stops in the draw stop. And they also have an option where you can put a limb stop on there as well. And that, obviously, a limb stop is as solid of a draw stop as you can get. So whereas, you know, when I was feeling them, the rating might have been 5 or 6 out of 10. You put the limb stop on there, it's most likely going to be 10 out of 10. Another thing I learned in talking with some of the dealers for the Hoyt compound bow is Hoyt now went to where you can change the draw length on the cam. It used to be you had to switch out the draw mods, which made it more difficult, you know, for if you wanted to change your draw length or sell it to somebody who had a different draw length. Now having that all on the cam, I think is nice. However, the dealers that I was talking to said with the Hoyts, it actually goes out of timing a little bit. Throughout this video, although I edited it pretty much out, I was running up and down the steps down to the pro shop up to the archery range because the draw lengths got in the wrong position. So whereas I was hoping they would all be set up at 30-inch draw, 70 pounds, some of them were at the shortest draw length possible on the cam. So I was running back and forth for that. That means that when those draw lengths were changed, it's possible that the timing went out a little bit, which lended to a little bit of a spongy back wall because the stops weren't hitting exactly at the same time. So that's just something I want to point out too. Some of those ratings could have been a little better if the timing was a little better on some of the bows. So if you're Hoyt brand specific, just keep that in mind. Get out there and shoot those Hoyts to see what you like best. However, if you're not brand specific, but you like the hybrid cam system, I would also encourage you to check out the Expedition lineup, which is the bow brand I shot in my previous video. If you haven't seen that, I'll provide a link for it in the description section of this video because it's worth checking out. I found that with the Expedition bows, they were a little smoother in the draw cycle, yet still providing a little bit better speeds than some of the Hoyts. Another thing I kind of like about the Expedition, because I've shot both Hoyt, I've owned both Hoyt and Expedition, and I've tuned both. And in the tuning process, I personally think that Expedition has a little edge in that the way that they have their draw stops set up, you can adjust for knock travel coming off the bow. And I don't want to get into all the specifics here, but because again, I have a whole video on it that you can check out. But the way that you tune those and get the arrow flight coming off the bow, it's really easy and quick to be able to get that bow shooting, you know, bullet holes through paper. In fact, the rep that I was working with in creating the bow review for Expedition, he is the rep for Pennsylvania and New York and New Jersey. And at one point in time, one of the dealers in New York sent him my video on tuning, and ever since then, because those guys like it so much, they've been sending it around to their dealers to learn how to tune their bows with my video. So I felt very honored for that. And but it is, I mean, it's an easy thing. So if you like the hybrid cam system, which is there's two cams, they're just not exactly the same. And there's a control cam and a bus cable, or excuse me, a control cable and a bus cable. So one of the cables goes right from one cam to the other, and the other cable goes from the cam to the top limb. And being that it's a split limb, it's nice to have that yoke system because you can manipulate the cam a little bit. In fact, I'll go grab one of my Hoyts and one of my Expedition bows to show you this real quick. But that's a hybrid cam system. So if you're interested in that type of a system, check both brands out and see what you like the best. So there's some people who would prefer the Hoyt over the Expedition, and some people who prefer the Expedition over the Hoyt, but you make that decision for yourself. Okay, so here's one of my older Hoyts. Here's the yoke system here, the bus cable, as I was referring to. And this goes from the limb to the bottom cam. And there's also a cable that goes from the top cam to the bottom cam, and that slaves the two of them together. So that's your hybrid cam system. This one, you can tell the top one is a little more rounded than the bottom, at least I can tell. And then for the Expedition, same cable and system that way. You have your yoke system here, and then you have your other cable that goes from one cam to the other. And here's the limb stops I was referring to with the Expedition. Not sure how well it'll be visible with the lighting, but it creates a very solid back wall with those limb stops as opposed to the cable stops. Here, I'll just draw, well, actually I don't have an arrow on there, so I'm not going to draw them back. But then on this Hoyt, you have a cable stop here and a cable stop here. And so when you come to full draw, they hit the cable. And when I was talking about the solidness of the back wall, being that the stop is against the cable, if you pull a little harder, it can move the cable a little bit. Whereas when that limb stop goes into the limb, you know, it's solid against solid. It's not gonna go anywhere. So that's something for you to consider when you're thinking about what type of bow you're interested in trying out and shooting. Okay, in the next video, I'm gonna be shooting the Bowtech Rain 6 and the Rain 7, which is one of their new bows. And I can tell you, it's very nice, and I'm looking forward to share the data with you that I got as far as speeds and everything else. So make sure you tune into that video. And that particular bow has a different cam system as well. Instead of with this, where you have 2 cams that are slightly different with one yoke system, on that bow, you have 2 cams with 2 yoke systems. And when you're shooting a split limb bow, I kind of like having the yoke system because you can manipulate, like with those cams, you know, you can have cam lean and stuff because of the limbs. I said cams a second ago, but because you have 4 limbs, basically 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, you have to control all those. And so having the yoke system helps in that process. Whereas if you don't have a yoke system and a split limb, you can't really control cam lean like you can with a split yoke. So in the Bowtech Rain, you have a double split system with the yokes and 2 cams. So stay tuned to check out what happens in that video. Thanks for tuning into this one. Until then, take care, God bless. And again, another special thanks to Miller's Gun Shop. They really put in a lot of work to help me do this video for you. God bless.